So I think they say if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And that's kind of where my motivation for it. I am living in New York. I wasn't moving anytime soon. And I looked at a few acquisitions prior to thinking about a startup, and it just didn't make sense for me. And I made sure this location was exactly where I thought I could build a patient pool and I could build a practice, because competition is crazy, especially in New York, anywhere really. And you have to see who else is taking the insurances that you may want to take or may want to be fee for service. I knew for me that I had to take insurance because I was going to be a startup in a pretty established neighborhood.
Welcome back to another episode of Dental Marketing Theory. I'm your host, Gary Bird. I'm the owner of SMC National, where we help offices just like yours level the playing field against the big guys out there so you can grow the way that you want. And today I have Dr. Singh, who recently opened up a practice in Manhattan, and she's seeing over 90 new patients a month in one of the most competitive markets. And she took the time to write down the 8 things that she did before she opened. And these are things that you could definitely apply yourself. Very simple, very straightforward. She's an amazing client of ours and somebody that I'd really admire. And I think that you're going to learn a lot from today. So stay tuned. All right, we are live. And today we have a special guest, one of our clients, Dr. Singh. She actually came on to share her experience, how she's grown her office. And I was asking her how she did it, because she's in one of the toughest markets in probably the world for dental in Manhattan. And she said, you know what, Gary, I actually have been documenting each step along the way, and I would love to share that with your audience. So I said, let's do it. Let's film a podcast. Let's put this all on paper and let's give it away for free. And she was gracious enough to do that. So thank you so much for coming on today. And I'm really excited to talk through this thought process of just how you were able to do this in a really tough market. Like, first of all, you have to be crazy enough to do it, right? So like, hey, I'm going to go start a startup in Manhattan. Like, could you just walk, before we go through the list, and I know we won't get through every single point, but how did you like say that this is where and how I'm going to do this? We got a goal to get to 10,000 subscribers, and 85% of you are not subscribed to the channel yet. So make it happen. Subscribe. Tell them.
Subscribe.
Good job. Make it happen.
So I think they say if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. And that's kind of where my motivation for it. I'm living in New York. I wasn't moving anytime soon. And I looked at a few acquisitions prior to thinking about a startup, and it just didn't make sense for me. Financially, the work that was going to go into rebuilding a patient pool, going in and trying to make sure that they want to stay with you, but then also updating the carpeting or the chairs or getting new supplies in and new up-to-date technology. So for me, it made sense to start from scratch, which was really scary, but also it's mine. I decided how I wanted to do things and where I wanted to be and how I wanted my patients to feel when they came into the dental practice.
As you were going through that, you were smart enough to like write it down, because it's so much, right? Like you could honestly be overwhelming as you're going and starting a new business. It could feel like you look back, you're like, how did I even do this? But you actually went through and you started documenting it. So I'm not going to go through all of your points today because it's too long for the show, but I want to go through the couple of them. And for anybody listening, if you want the full list that you put together, it's down below. There's a little link down there. And you can access that. But let's start with the first one. So you said first thing you need to do if you're going to start a practice, you need to choose your path. Are you going to go startup versus acquisition? I know there isn't a right or a wrong answer when you're speaking generally, but when you're speaking specifically, there's definitely a right or a wrong answer. So how did you get to the conclusion for what you wanted? I know you kind of said, hey, it didn't make sense because of the investment, but how can another dentist, especially somebody who's brand new thinking about doing this, how can they work through that?
I think it's really important to decide, do you want to be taking over someone's patient pool, or do you want to start from scratch? I think that was the most important. I wasn't looking at practices. I wasn't going to buy into a practice that I'd already been working at. I was looking at true acquisition, like buying over an older practice where someone was retiring, where they would try and stay on and maybe not stay on. And I did a lot of research at that time. I tried to see, how many patients do you expect to stay? How many patients are going to be okay with you coming in? And a lot of these practices, the older practices, didn't take insurance, but how many of them are you going to like, how many new patients can you bring in with insurance? What are you going to do in terms of marketing? Because a lot of these older websites weren't a thing. SEO isn't a thing for them. And so I think it came down to I wanted to put my own stamp on something and I wanted it to be mine, but I also needed to make sure it financially made sense. And it didn't financially make sense for me because I was going to go and acquire a practice, so pay for a practice, and then I'd have to renovate the whole thing and I'd have to still put money into marketing. So it just didn't at that time make financially sense.
Yeah, so because if you're going to do a build out, you might as well build out your own thing the way you want it, right? So basically, when you're buying a practice, you're buying the staff who may stay or go, and then you're buying the patients who may stay or go or may be healthy and not, you know what I mean, depending on the kind of, and then the building and equipment, basically, right? So yeah, you gotta really think through that, and then from there, you talked about you decided, okay, I'm going to build from scratch and do this the way that I want to do it. But then from there, and the next really important thing is your location. That was point number 2 in your list. Locking in the right location. I've seen this presented 2 different ways. So I've seen people who say, just get the cheapest thing you can get, just get out there and start. And then I've heard the other side where it's like, well, your location is that's part of your marketing budget, because if you're in the right location, you're just automatically going to get new patients, but you're going to pay for that. Like you might pay 2, 3, 4 times the rent, especially where you're at. I can only imagine what the rent is where you're at. So how are you thinking through that process?
So I think for me is really important. Again, bringing it back to marketing, right? Being a storefront in Manhattan is ideal because people are walking by. There's so many people day in and day out. If you're in a building on the 6th floor, I'm paying more for marketing. Location wise, I wanted to be in an area that I was living in. This is my work from home situation because I started during COVID. Everyone else is working from home. I'm 2 blocks away, so it worked for me. But before we locked into the location, you have to find a broker who is working for you and not for the landlord. And then after that, I had a company, I can't remember who did an analysis of the dentists in the area, who took insurance, what their reviews were, what their websites looked like. And I made sure this location was exactly where I thought I could build a patient pool and I could build a practice, because competition is crazy, especially in New York, but anywhere really. And you have to see who else is taking the insurances that you may want to take or may want to be fee for service. I knew for me that I had to take insurance because I was going to be a startup in a pretty established neighborhood. But some of these analyses can let you know if you can just go straight in as fee for service. I unfortunately couldn't, but things like that really you have to take into account.
I like the strategy that you use too, because, and I know everybody right now is anti-insurance, right? Everybody wants to be fee for service. No one wants to take insurance, but that's not realistic, right? So what you did, you have 17 dentists on your street. The patients there all have money to afford treatment. There's not a lack of finances to afford treatment. However, all of them have insurance and nobody takes it. So you did something really smart where you said, well, we'll take your insurance and nobody else is. So that gets them in the door, but then they have finances to pay for the treatment above and beyond what the insurance isn't going to cover. That was really, really smart. Like, not most people, I know that I've heard of that approach, but I've never talked to somebody personally that executed on that. So that was really, really good the way you put that together.
Yeah, I mean, that was what our differential was. So the other 7 dentists were older, established, had been around for ages, had their patient pools. And I actually looked at one to acquire just down the road, and it just didn't make sense. The active patient pool was less than what 1 month of patients brings in for me. So it just didn't make sense.
Yeah. There's a book called Blue Ocean Strategy, and it talks about that, where it says, whatever everybody else is doing, do the opposite, whatever it is. And if you just do the opposite of them, then you have endless opportunities. And that's what you created for yourself. And then the third point that you talked about in your document here, and you have all the details in here, how you did this, securing financing. And I think this is probably the scariest part, especially nowadays. I feel so bad for the younger dentists. They got like $1 bazillion in student debt. they're not making a ton of money because they're working for a DSO and they're not doing a ton of treatment. And so they're not making a ton of money from that DSO to pay down the debt. So they almost have to do something else. But then they have to take out another loan for their practice. So when you say secure financing, how would you advise somebody to walk through that?
I would call your banks, any of the ones that you know in the area. So I had reached out to 2 banks that I knew were dental specific in this area. And there's reps for your specific area. You'll get in touch with them. They'll contact you. They're amazing.
Do you literally just Google it, like dental loans?
So I had a team of people. So I actually started this process with a consultant who does it for free through one of the big dental providers. And he had kind of set me out to everybody. But you can Google it, or you can just reach out to, like, let's just say Bank of America. That's who I went through. Reach out to Bank of America and say, I'm looking for a dental loan, and they'll connect you with the person who's in the area. But the most important thing is you need to make sure you get approved for financing, and that financing lasts for about 4 to 6 months, so they can hold that interest rate for you for 4 to 6 months. Before you even say, I'm going to go forward, you need to get that financing, because talking lease negotiations or doing anything, if you don't have the money, you can't sign the lease, and they're not going to let you sign the lease until the bank has approved the lease.
It's just like buying a house, right? Like there's no point in going and you can scroll Zillow all day long if you want. Look at all the houses you can't afford, but you can't go and start the loan to buy the house until you're approved for the loan.
Exactly. So getting that financing secured is really important.
And then you said lock in the rate too. Get that rate locked in.
I ended up being really lucky with my first rate because it was right at the tail end of COVID. My second rate with the new expansion that I'm doing is a second loan, and it's not as great, but listen, we pay it off. We're dentists. We work really hard, and your startup will finance it itself, essentially. But it's scary. It's really scary.
Yep. And then, and I know this is tricky for people, especially if they're new to it and you've never done it before. It's like chicken and egg. So that's a good tip. And I know some people are like, duh, that's common sense, but it's not if you've never done it before. So the next part, and I think this goes in conjunction with which thing do I do first, which do I second, third. You got to have your team put together, because one of the downsides to doing an acquisition is you got to build a whole team, right? Now it could be an upside too, because I've seen people buy practices and they're like, this is a dumpster fire of a team culturally. You know what I mean? Maybe the people are great, but it's not a good fit. So how do you even start to begin to work through that and getting the right people? You don't even have the building set up yet.
Yeah. I think the most important actually is reaching out to one of the dental reps. They are all connected. Everyone is actually already in a team themselves. So reach out to multiple, see who you gel with the most, and then have them introduce you to a dental specific lawyer, to a dental specific CPA, to a dental specific employment lawyer, and a dental specific broker, because they have to be dental specific. A broker will come on and be like, I can do the deal, but they're not going to understand that the bank wants you to have at least 10 years or 15 years, depending on your loan. And so you need to find someone who's dental specific. And the best way to do that is to reach out.
That's really smart. And so do the teams, just so I'm understanding. So I've never worked in a dental office before. So just so I understand this, because I've never worked in a dental office before. So the reps are going into all these dental offices and they're selling supplies. They're talking to the teams, and the teams are telling them man, I don't want to work here anymore. Or I'm moving, or, I'm looking for another opportunity, and they're communicating with those dental reps. Is that right?
Yeah. So reach out to your Patterson rep or your Benco rep or your Shine rep and say, listen, I think I want to do a startup. Who do you know? And they'll have somebody. Reach out to your dental groups in the area and say, what lawyers did you use? But you have to find the team that works best for you, because everyone will give their opinion and their person that worked really well, but you have to find somebody that works for you. And that A team is going to be with you from start to finish. So you have to make sure that they have the same vision that you do, because that's the most important part.
Got it. Okay. So, and I'm reading through this. So you're talking more about your A team, like your architect, your lawyers, your vendors, your CPA, those kind of things. What about with your team that works inside the office?
It depends on your non-compete as well, right? A lot of times you can't take staff from the practice that you're currently at. You can't even tell your owner that you're leaving because they then will either let you go and you need the money at the time because you're doing a startup and you need to have some sort of associateship paying for your bills that you're going to now have double of. So a lot of times you don't have that luxury of talking to the staff at the practice that you're currently at. If you do, and I was able to have one of my assistants come with me and he's still with me and he's been my through and through from the beginning. If you are lucky enough to do that, then you do start discussing it and you start getting your office manager's opinion about what location or what insurances you should take. I was in a very different location previously as an associate to where I am now. So I wasn't really able to have those conversations and I wasn't able to tell my doctor that I was leaving because he would have let me go.
Hmm. Got it. And so how did you find the rest of your team then? How did you piece together the rest of them?
So people I previously worked with, we found a few people just through like online listings. But you start really small. I had one assistant and one receptionist when I started, and that was it.
Yeah, because you're starting at zero, right? So you literally have nobody coming in. So that makes sense. You start small and you start building out. Okay, so let's look at the next thing. You talked about launching marketing early. So like how early are we talking?
Like when you think you're going to do a startup, I would start talking to branding and I would start getting, especially when your lease is locked in, I would start getting marketing going because your Google SEO is going to be at zero. So you have to get it going. You need a website together. You need branding. You need photos. You need knowledge about what your area is going to look like. So right as you sign that lease, get your marketing going.
I tell people all the time, yeah, getting your Google My Business is one of the biggest things because that's what shows up. That's where you get your Google reviews. And when you start from zero, like you don't exist on Google, like you do not exist. So you have to get that up. You get the address, get the phone number, and that's all you need. Like you can even change the name, you can change the pictures, but just getting that, securing that, and then Google starts to index you, and then you start working your way up through Google, like what you're talking about. So that's really, really smart. And you have a whole list of things that you did there. So that was really good. Handling legal licensing and credentialing. Oh man, this is like probably the least. When I hear that, to me as an entrepreneur, I'm like, oh, I don't even want to think through all of that. How did you outsource that, or how did you work through that?
I outsourced it because it was just something so once you get your budget from your bank, like this is how much you're going to give, they start breaking it apart into this is construction, this is what you're going to use for equipment, and this is what you have to use for everything else. Getting credentialed with insurance companies was something I had to do because I was going to take insurance. So I hired a company to do that. Your business licenses, I didn't know when I was going to do a startup that you in New York cannot work as an LLC. You do have to be a PC. So I had to find a lawyer who then had to transfer all of my corporation over into the name of my practice. It's also really big, and it might just be a New York thing, but I'm sure in every state, your name of your practice has to be approved before you can put a sign up and before you can start billing insurances for it. So if that doesn't get approved and you've got a full practice up, you don't have a name.
That's horrible. That would be horrible. How'd you learn that? I actually haven't heard of that one. So that might be a New York thing.
Yeah, so you have to get again this is like the team that you build, the dental team gives you all this knowledge. So my LLC was under my personal name and I hadn't come up with a name for my practice. We actually thought it was my husband and I thought about the name just sitting at a bar one day drinking a glass of wine, and we'd gone through a lot and this just happened to hit the spot. But it takes, and this is again during COVID, it took about 2 to 3 months for them to approve my name before I could even do branding. So I had already started thinking about branding and having a landing page when I'd signed my lease because the lease negotiations had taken so long that I knew that I wanted to do this. But there's such specific things to each state that you need to know about. And that is coming again from your team.
Yeah. Anytime you're dealing with business or legal things like that, especially around medical, you have to get the right answers. You have to understand what you're doing and how you're doing it. And then for the last thing is finalize, build out budget and supply. So the one thing I've learned about construction is it's always like twice as much, they say, or 2, 3 times as much as whatever what was your experience with that?
I thankfully had a great contractor who I'm actually using again for next door. But it is any door color you want to change, it's an extra fee. Any extra like feature you want to put on a dental chair, it's an extra fee. So you have to have that all accounted for when you are looking at how much the bank is giving you in terms of money. Because I had to put down a security deposit for my lease, it was a big chunk. So I didn't have a lot of money to work with outside of what the bank had given me. And you just kind of like, I only built out 3 chairs when I opened. I have a 5 chair practice, and I started building out more chairs when I decided that I had enough patients to come through and I could afford to build out the 4th chair and then the 5th chair. But you start small. You don't have to fit it and kit it just exactly how you want it to be 5 years down the right line. You want it enough that you can get a patient through the door, you can have them treatment planned, and you can do treatment on them. And that's why you need a small staff, a really small intro practice. But it's really important to get that branding and marketing done because otherwise no one else can find you.
And one other thing I would love your thoughts on is I totally agree. Starting small, just getting it off the ground. But then I've been told you want to make sure you have room to expand, because I've seen a lot of people, they grow really quick and then they're like, I'm done growing. I literally can't grow anymore in the space that I'm in. Did you think through that ahead of time, or what's your thoughts on that? I know it's a little more tricky where you're at.
Yeah, you actually just did a podcast with one of the doctors who was just talking about that in Houston, I think. And I was just listening to it. I I thought I would be fine in a 5-chair practice. I'm not. I've outgrown it. But at the time, I was thinking a lot smaller. I thought it would just be 1 doctor, 2 hygiene. That's not how it ended up going because I wanted to expand it more and I ended up needing more chairs. But I thought in New York, a 5-chair practice is a really big deal. Like you don't get to have this much space, storefront, 5-chair. It's quite exciting. So for me, I hadn't thought about it, but I wish I had. I got lucky that next door opened up and I'm able to expand in there. But before next door opened up, I had already started thinking of like where else can I open. But it had started getting tricky because then you're crossing boroughs in Manhattan or the Park or whatever, and it's a little bit longer. But that's what people end up doing even when they're in a different state. They have 2 practices, 20 minutes of each other, whatever, things like that. But I wish I had thought about that. So that is something that everyone should think about. Are you going to grow out of this? Are you going to put specialists?
It's a good problem to have, right? Like that's the kind of problem you want to have. But yeah, if you have a back room that you have a lot, you're like, man, this storage, I don't need it. That's a good thing to have just in case you need it down the road. And I've seen everybody does that. They start to grow and then it's like, man, I never thought I would grow to this big. So that's the goal, right? We want to outgrow even our dreams. So great job on that. Any last pieces of advice before we tell everybody goodbye?
I think it's an honor and it's very exciting to be your own startup boss because you start it from the beginning, you put your stamp on it. And I think it's definitely something people should think about more so than be scared of because it is really just the best thing I've done. And obviously, since I'm doing it again, but if you can get the right team and if you can get the right people, and you'll have some hiccups at the beginning and you'll have some hiccups 2 years down the line, like everyone does, like I did. But again, it's yours and you're not taking a legacy of someone else and trying to put yourself into it because a lot of those patients don't want to see you. They don't want to see a new practice. They don't want to see an updated practice. They want to see their old dentist. So it's really what you think you can do. And I think the startup life is great. I'm always here to help. So
Yeah, that's awesome. All of Dr. Singh's information's below. She's a wealth of information and she is just building these out and doing them and learning. And I really appreciate you coming on and just sharing your real story. We don't get a lot of that in dental. Everybody just shares the highlight reels and not the hard parts. So I appreciate you coming on, sharing the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just doing it to help other people. So thank you so much for coming on. And I'm really excited about what you're going to build. It's going to be awesome just to see each stage of it. And I hope I want to bring you back on once you have like okay, here's how I did the 2 or 3. I think a lot of people would be helped by that.
Yeah, sounds good. Thank you so much, Gary.
Thanks, Dr. Singh. Hey, thanks so much for listening to the whole podcast. You're truly one of our greatest fans, and we really appreciate you. And we want to give you a $3,000 marketing credit to be used to grow your office. We have the link right down below. We'll meet really quickly. It takes about 15 minutes, and we'll tell you how you can save $3,000 on growing your office. And if you're an existing client, let us know, because this is for new clients, but we have some giveaways for existing clients as well. And it's great. So you'll love it. Thank you so much for listening. We really, really appreciate you.